Hello and welcome to Norwich railway station, ready for Aviation Route 3.
Hello, another cycling journey through the heart of Norfolk. On today's cycle route, I'll be exploring forgotten airfields, poignant memorials and the sites of dramatic World War II crashes. I'll be uncovering stories of heroism, tragedy and resilience tied to Britain's aviation history. Strap in as we pedal through time and memory, tracing the flight paths of history.
So the route starts as usual at the railway station at Norwich Centre, and the first point of interest is the City of Norwich Aviation Museum here, just by Norwich Airport.
The museum is home to a fascinating collection of aircraft and artefacts. Step inside to discover the strategic importance of Norfolk in the Second World War. This region was once dotted with dozens of RAF airfields. Some are now quiet fields, others lost to time, but here they are remembered in full force. The museum also remembers the contribution of the United States Army Air Force, with a display attributed to the 458th Heavy Bombardment Group, who flew B-24 Liberator bombers from Havilland St Faith's Airfield, just across the road, now the International Airport at Norwich.
The museum has got all sorts of exhibits here, from the First World War onwards, right through the Second World War, and up to modern day times.
Nearly all of the aircraft exhibited were once based and flown from Norfolk airfields, including the English Electric Lightning and the Nimrod, which was based at RAF Marham. The Nimrod was a maritime patrol aircraft with three primary roles: anti-submarine and surface warfare, search and rescue coordination, and later electronic warfare. Although not operationally based in Norfolk, the Harrier was flown from RAF West Raynham as part of a tri-nation evaluation project during the years 1964 to 1965.
Perhaps one of my favourite exhibits here is the Set-Cap Jaguar. These were based at RAF Coltishall up until fairly recently.
The Jaguar was a versatile twin-engine supersonic jet developed by the United Kingdom and France. It was primarily designed for close air support and nuclear strike missions. It has also been used for reconnaissance and interdiction roles.
Wow, just look at this Wellington Bomber. It's a delta wing, absolutely enormous.
The Vulcan Delta Wing Bomber initially served as a key component of British nuclear deterrent during the Cold War. Later, it transitioned to a conventional bombing role, notably during the Falklands conflict, where it was used for long-range raids.
Apart from military exhibits, there's plenty of civilian aircraft here. Here's an old Air UK aircraft that got taken over by KLM.
Air Anglia was a privately owned airline formed in Norwich Airport in 1970. The airline recorded no accidents or incidents in its 10-year existence until 1980, when it merged to become Air UK, and once again in 1997 when it was rebranded as KLM UK.
And of course, if you're interested in rotary, there's helicopters as well. I don't fancy flying this one very much. I don't think I'm going to get very far with that rotor head. It's a fascinating museum, well worth a visit. It's £9 for entry for an adult, and there's a great cafe on site. City of Norwich Aviation Museum is the first point of interest and a great place to start this route.
Leaving the museum, riding west out of Havilland St Faith's and through Horsford, it's not long before you're in the countryside enjoying the wood canopy covered roads. This area just northwest of Norwich is characterised by several woods and plantations that have stood for centuries. At Havilland, the village displays a set of medieval stocks and a village sign with an aircraft on it representing a de Havilland mosquito. As I ride into Corston, I approach the next point of interest, nestled just outside the wall of St Agnes Church. From the museum, it's about 14 kilometres through Horsford Woods to the next point of interest. I'm at Corston. I've done 25 kilometres and this is point of interest number 2. This memorial commemorates 2 crashes. The first crash was of a Hampden Bomber, part of the Royal Air Force. The plaque says, this plaque is in memory of those that were killed in a Handley Page Hampden Bomber of 61 Squadron, which crashed into the Bluestone Plantation on February the 10th, 1941 during World War II, killing all the crew. The second plaque commemorates the loss of the B17 Lucky Strike. Lucky Strike was returning from a raid on the submarine pens at Kiel, Germany on the 5th of January 1944. Unfortunately for the crew, a bomb failed to release and remained hooked up on board. The crew chief tried to dislodge the final bomb with the twist of a screwdriver, but in doing so unintentionally dislodged a 410-gallon auxiliary fuel tank. The crew began the trip home knowing that they did not have enough fuel for the return journey. Lucky Strike was anything but lucky that fateful day, as it was forced eventually to attempt a landing on farmland near Corston, narrowly missing the church. Tragically, 2 of the American aircrew didn't survive the crash landing. Corston is a beautiful village with some historic buildings. Then it's onto some narrow single-lane roads, skirting the old airfield at Alton Street, past the church of St Peter and St Paul, one of the many flint-built churches along the route, before reaching the main Holt Road, B1149. Remember to turn right, unlike me. I can't understand how I couldn't follow my own route, but it did happen. So remember, when you reach the Hayden Estate Gatehouse, turn right, northbound towards Corston. The route then goes through Bristol, once again passing some pretty little cottages and houses. Along the route between Corston and Bristol, you may well see quite a few old railway structures. For example, things like this old bridge. And that's because there's a lot of disused railways around this part of North Norfolk, running into Melton Constable, which I'll tell you a little bit more about when we get there. This whole tree line used to be an old railway. And so this railway bridge now sits in the middle of nowhere. A route catch up then from Corston, it's around the old airfield at Alton Street onto the B1149. Remember to turn right towards Saxthorpe and Corston and onto Melton Constable. Melton Constable is first attested in the Domesday Book of 1086, and notwithstanding its rural location, the village became an important railway centre on the Midland and Great Northern Joint Railway, or the M&GN. Melton Constable, a railway village. It's commemorated on this lovely plaque in this arch, and that's because Melton Constable used to be a major locomotive works. It was also the confluence and joining of several different networks that happened to come through Melton Constable, and there were actually quite a large number of sidings just down here. The railway station stood here from 1883 until it was removed in 1964. I suppose the name of the street is a bit of a clue. This is Wellington Road, the location of where a Wellington Bomber crashed. The plaque has a good picture of a Wellington and the crew, and it also shows the scene of the fatal crash, which was the railway bridge just off Hillside.
which the Wellington Bomber crashed into.
On the night of the 16th of August 1941 at 21:35, the Wellington Bomber took off from its base at RAF Binbrook in North Lincolnshire for a mission over Cologne. The aircraft took damage from enemy flak and limped back across the channel towards England and made first landfall over Norfolk. The pilot, Charles McVeigh, was probably looking for a suitable alternative landing site to put down at. Already struggling to maintain height, on seeing some lights and thinking it may be the aerodrome, McVeigh dropped down, only to find out that the lights were for railway signalling and crashed into a railway bridge at Melton Constable. Of the 6 crew, 3 were killed and the others were taken to the Norfolk and Norwich hospital, but they did survive. Using the station plan and Google Maps, I located the bridge that McVeigh hit. Cross-referencing it with my drone, one can see that the lines of the railway into the station may have looked similar to the lines of the runway lights, bearing in mind that this was wartime and it was a blackout with minimum use of lights at night. As it happens, it was discovered that a £2,000 bomb remained hung up in the bomb bay, which, without this considerable extra weight, the machine may have been able to reject the fated approach with better climb performance, enabling it to avoid the inevitable crash into the bridge when the pilot, all too late, realised that this wasn't a runway. The route now travels south 5 kilometres to Hindolverston. Separated by just a few miles is the site of another crashed Wellington, which occurred 2 years later in 1943. It's remembered at the War Memorial. The plane went down on the 11th of December in 1943 and it crashed into a field by Park Farm, which is just down this road.
This is the field just to the west of Hindolverston where the Wellington Bomber crashed. Now, with the use of the aerial photograph that was taken at the time and Google Maps, I've been able to positively identify this wood that's got a very specific shape, and it's clear that the Wellington crashed in this field.
On the 12th of November 1943, just after midnight, the twin-engine Wellington Bomber took off from RAF Little Horwood on a practice cross-country flight piloted by RAF Flight Sergeant Merridew and his crew. The plane was on radio silence and its whereabouts was relied upon by the acoustic locators of the Royal Observer Corps. The flight appeared to proceed normally for the first hour and 15 minutes. The aircraft was then sound plotted by the Royal Observer Corps, heading in a northeasterly direction at an estimated height of 1,000 feet. But shortly after it had gone out of earshot, there was a tremendous flash and the sound of an impact was heard. At once, the members of the Observer Corps realised that the plane had gone down. Inspection at the scene of the accident indicated that a structural failure had occurred at a comparatively low altitude. The aircraft had struck the ground at a very steep angle, disintegrating and then burnt. There was no evidence to show any attempt had been made to abandon the aircraft. All the crew on board perished.
It's incredible to think that this peaceful part of Norfolk, rural, agricultural, was the scene of a devastating air crash. 1943. From Hindolverston, we're going to head south towards Foulsham.
In World War II, RAF Foulsham played host to RAF No. 2 Group Bomber Command, and it opened in May 1942. The airfield was equipped with 3 tarmac and 1 wood chip runways. Foulsham was one of the few airfields to be fitted with FIDO in 1944. That was a fog dispersal system which used fires at the sides of the runways to burn off the fog and highlight the runway position.
Now at Foulsham, site of an old RAF airbase, there's a commemorative stone here just in front of an old pillbox.
The road around the airfield is partly overlaid on the old Perry track and taxiways. From Hindolverston, it's a short hop over the airfield at Foulsham to point of interests 5 and 6. I'm in the village of Foulsham and there's a memorial plaque here, very inconspicuous one, on the side of this farm building, and it's commemorating a mid-air collision between a B17 and a Bristol Beaufighter. But I was just talking to the gentleman that lives in the building over here, and he was telling me that the difference in brickwork between this end of this building here that I'm pointing at and over here is due to the fact that the aircraft came down and crashed into these buildings, or part of the debris from the mid-air collision came down and struck this building. On the evening of August 31st, 1943, 11 US aircrewmen boarded their B-17 for a night training flight. The B-17, nicknamed Eager Eagle, was part of the 305th Bomb Group, and it took off from its base at Hindolverston in Northamptonshire. That same night, 2 British RAF aircrew boarded their Bristol Beaufighter, and they also got airborne. Because there was a red air raid alert on, both aircraft flew without navigation lights. At 23:30 hours, overhead Church Farm at Foulsham, Eager Eagle collided with the Beaufighter, catastrophically damaging both machines. The stricken aircraft careered into the ground, damaging farm buildings in the crash, and were both destroyed. Only 2 of the B-17 waist gunners were able to bail out. Consequently, the remaining 9 aircrew on the B-17 and 2 on the Beaufighter were all lost and perished that night. Right, next on to Bawdeswelll and the site of a mosquito crash into a church. The final point of interest on this video is the church at Bawdeswelll. It's the location of yet another crash site, this time involving a mosquito registration Kilo Bravo 364. The plane was one of 12 aircraft from 608 Squadron, which set out from Bawdeswelll, Norfolk, known as RAF Downham Market, to attack Gelsenkirchen in Germany on the 6th of November 1944. All 11 of the mosquitoes successfully dropped their bombs and then returned back towards Norfolk. However, cloud and icing conditions were encountered. Kilo Bravo 364 is thought to have become severely iced up during the return descent, and it was considered likely that at the time the pilot lost control and was unable to maintain height. At 20:45 hours, the mosquito struck All Saints Church, setting it on fire. Parts of the aircraft carried on and hit Berwick House and Chauncey House opposite, causing considerable damage to both. Debris was spread over a wide area. The Dereham Fire Brigade and firefighters from the American Air Base at Adelbridge, that's Western Longville, attended, and it took 4 hours to control the blaze. Both pilot and navigator were lost. A piece of the machine is preserved in the church as a memorial to the tragic incident. The final part of the route takes you across the busy A1167 to Swanton Morley, past Roberts Barracks and then on to Western Longville, and routing through Taverham back to the station at Norwich, where this ride terminates. I hope you've enjoyed the ride and look forward to you joining me on the next one, the last of my aviation route rides. And until then, bye for now.